What is up, guys? I got a request to check out what are my top 5 picks for smartphones with a stylus. So let's go ahead and get into it. I think the best option still, if you want a stylus, is going to be the Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. It just is a beast of a phone for anybody that really wants the most powerful experience. You have still a beautiful design on here, glass and metal design, IP68 dust and water resistant as well. You have a massive 6.9-inch display. It's a 1440p display, 496 for the PPI, and it's also a dynamic AMOLED display at 120 hertz HDR10 plus. So one of the best displays that you can get right now. The bezels are super slim. You have the punch hole. It is a really nice display. So you do have, of course, the latest version of Android with the Snapdragon 865 chip and the Adreno 650. Basically, this is still a flagship phone. It's still going to be able to fly through applications. Gaming is going to be maxed out on this phone. It is still going to be an excellent phone if you are into gaming and stuff like that. So this phone also has micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 12 gigs of RAM. And yes, that is on the base model, so tons of power in this phone. You also have stereo speakers, no headphone jack, of course. You do have NFC. The fingerprint scanner is under the display, and you also have Samsung desktop support on here as well. This phone still has excellent cameras and 108 megapixel lens, and then you have a 12 megapixel periscope telephoto lens on here with 50x hybrid zoom, 12 megapixel ultra wide with 8K video, and then a 10 megapixel selfie with 4K video. So this is going to be one of the best phones when it comes to just how the stylus feels as far as accuracy. So if you're into drawing and stuff like that, taking notes, everything is going to be extremely accurate with the stylus. And I believe it does have a built-in microphone as well, which is pretty cool. So that was always a really nice addition. This phone does have a 4,500 milliamp battery with 25 watt fast charging, along with wireless charging and reverse wireless charging. So definitely, if you want all the best bells and whistles with stylus, then you should check out the Note 20 Ultra. Next is the LG Stylo 6. I honestly enjoyed this phone. It was really cheap. I got it like locked to like Boost Mobile or something like that. And it does have a built-in stylus, and I think the phone is fine. It has actually a pretty big display at 6.8 inches. It's 1080p 395 for the PPI. It's an IPS panel. It got fairly bright. It was fairly colorful. I think the overall design is actually pretty clean on this phone as well. Kind of reminds me of the V60. And you do have Android 10 out of the box with the Helio P35 and Power VR graphics. Basically, this is not a powerful phone at all. This is a very basic phone for just doing basic casual stuff on here for people that really want to navigate with a stylus, or you want to write notes down and stuff like that. I've even seen people on YouTube actually drawing with this phone. So you do have on here micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 3 gigs of RAM. So that is nice. I think threw that in there. You also have a headphone jack with a loudspeaker, which sounds pretty decent. There is no NFC, so do note that if you're depending on mobile payments, you'd have a physical fingerprint scanner on the back, which works fine. And the cameras on here aren't terrible. I think, for the price, I think they're decent. A 13 megapixel standard, 5 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel depth, 1080p, and then you have a 13 megapixel selfie, also shoots in 1080p. The images were fine for the price point, so I wasn't gonna drag it really for that. But you also have a 4,000 milliamp battery, which is actually a pretty decent size. So the phone pretty much got through the day for me. So I think the highlight is definitely with the display on here. I think a 1080p display at 6.8 inches with stylus support is really nice. So I enjoyed that. But overall, it's a fine phone for what it is for, the cheap price. One of the most popular phones with the stylus is actually the Moto G Stylus, the 2021 variant. This phone is super popular because it balances itself at being pretty, inexpensive, but also still a pretty good phone. So you do have just a plastic design, nothing fancy, water repellent coating. Again, another big 6.8-inch display, 1080p. It's an IPS panel, 386 for the PPI. Beautiful panel here with the punch hole, so no issues there. You do have Android 10, which is basically a stock version. The Snapdragon 678 and Adreno 612. Pretty much like a mid-range chip. Again, you can do like gaming on here just fine. Micro SD support, 128 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM, which is really nice. This phone also has a headphone jack along with a single firing speaker. You also do not have NFC on the G Stylus, so do note that. And you also have a physical fingerprint scanner as well. From what I've seen, works great. From what I've seen with the cameras are pretty good on the G Stylus. You have a 48 megapixel standard, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro in depth sensor, along with 4K video and a 16 megapixel selfie. And yeah, the stylus support is awesome. Again, these are for people who want to navigate, want to draw on their phones. The G Stylus does a really great job. It has a lot of good things going for it with the camera, and also just having a really nice punch hole display. You also have a 4,000 milliamp battery on here, which seems to do pretty well with battery benchmarks. So this is also another phone to consider. Next is the Samsung Galaxy Note 8, which is also a really great older flagship. Or you can also get the Note 9. I'll leave that link in the description if you want to pay a little bit more money. I personally had the time to spend with the Note 8, and it was a really nice phone. So I really liked it. It had still a premium design. It still felt really nice. It actually had a very nice display, a Super AMOLED display at 6.3 inches, 1440p, 521 for the PPI. Overall, still a very beautiful and vibrant looking display. So you do have on here, I think this got maxed out at Android 9. Now there is like a huge community, so you can get a port to Android 10 and stuff like that. You do have a Snapdragon 835 and Adreno 540 on here. This phone was actually still very capable of playing video games. So PUBG, Call of Duty, it was still pretty capable of playing those games casually. So I was really surprised with that. You also have the micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on here. You also have 3.5mm jack with a single firing speaker. And you also have NFC on board. So you have a lot of the bells and whistles. You have the iris scanner, fingerprint scanner on here, Samsung desktop support. You still have a lot of little bells and whistles and stuff. And again, in addition to the really nice stylus support on here. So you do have on here pretty good cameras. So you have a 12 megapixel standard and then a 12 megapixel telephoto with 4K video and an 8 megapixel lens. And then you have that iris scanner and that shoots in 1440p video. And yeah, so image quality actually was surprisingly very good on the Note 8. I was really shocked with that. So it still retained, good detail. So that was nice. So this phone has a 3,300 milliamp battery, 15 watt charging, and it actually has wireless charging as well. And the battery life is, okay. I was able to get through the day with this phone, but definitely check out the Note 8 as a very cheap alternative, or the Note 9 if you want a slightly more spec'd up version. Last is the Infinix Note 6. So I believe this brand is very popular overseas, I believe, not so much here in the US, but you do have a 6-inch AMOLED display, 1080p, a pretty interesting looking design. I love the two-tone stylus design. I thought that was really cool. Android 9 with the Helio P35. Again, this phone is not super powerful or anything like that. It's more for casual gaming, casual apps and stuff like that. You do have micro SD support, 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. You do have a headphone jack with a loudspeaker on here, no NFC. From what I've seen, the cameras are kind of decent on here, so it is what it is. A 16 megapixel standard, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel depth, and it shoots in 1080p, 16 megapixel selfie. And again, you have good storage on here. Micro SD support, 64 gigs, 4 gigs of RAM. I thought that was pretty decent. This phone also has a fingerprint scanner, and it is rear mounted, which is really nice. So that's a good addition. And you do have a 4,000 milliamp battery as well, which will get you some pretty decent battery life. So this is definitely a phone to check out. So I'll catch you guys in the next video.